guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how I got this hair. Shout out to Peerless Hair Company for sponsoring this video and sending over these beautiful bundles. I'm going to be using this hair to create my wig, and to color I'm going to be using a mixture of Adore hair dye in Electric Lime and the Ion Color Brilliance dye in the shade Salmon. So to begin my wig construction, I like to put on my stocking cap that I'm going to be using on my head first. I already have my elastic band sewed onto the ends of my frontal, so I'm going to go ahead and place that on my head next. Then once the hair from my frontal is all out of the way, I'm going to trace the edge of my frontal and where it's laying on top of the wig cap, so that way I know where to sew my frontal down. I'm also going to make a mark where the elastic band is connected to the end of my frontal, and then also draw a line in the back so that way I know where to start sewing my bundles. So once I'm done making all of my marks, I'm going to go ahead and put my stocking cap on my mannequin head and also place that frontal back on there too. Because we have those marks where our elastic band started, I know how to center my frontal and where it's supposed to go. So once everything is perfectly lined up, I'm going to take some T-pins and pin the frontal down onto my wig cap so that way I can go ahead and start sewing everything on. So once my frontal's good, I'm going to start sewing on my bundles. That line that I made all the way in the back is the one that I'm going to follow and use to kind of gauge where I should sew my first weft. For about half of the wig, I'm going to be using the flip over method. Once I'm done with one row of sewing, I go ahead and flip the weft over and pin it down using T-pins just to make sure it's really secure and the weft isn't moving around or anything. And then I just begin sewing from there. When I'm starting a new row, I like to stitch 3 really small, tight stitches together and then just kind of sew as normal from there, so that way everything is really secure and there's no lifting on the edges of the fold, and everything is nice and tight. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. But yeah, so I'm going to be using the flip over method, and I'm just going to go ahead and do about halfway through the wig, and then from there I'll show you guys where I begin to cut my wefts. So this is the point where I'm going to go ahead and start cutting my wefts. I've gotten about halfway through my wig, but nothing much has changed. I'm going to sew as I normally would. The only difference is that I'm cutting my wefts versus using the flip over method. So I'm going to continue to use my T-pins to hold everything down, and I'm also still going to make those last 3 stitches really close together so everything is nice and secure. Then once I've gotten about this far in, I place my hand there so you guys can kind of see how much space I have left. But from here, I'm going to start sewing my wefts straight across. And same thing, I'm just cutting my wefts at the end so that way everything is nice and flat. And that's pretty much it for sewing. I'm just gonna sew on that last little piece there to close up that empty space. I'm gonna make sure to take that really, really close to the frontal as well, so that way there's no gap or anything. So once I'm all done sewing, I'm gonna cut off all the excess of that wig cap, then move on to cutting the hair. So this whole look is inspired by Khalif on Instagram. I'm gonna go ahead and post a picture of his work right here, so you guys can see the kind of the reference photo I was going off of. So to cut this hair, I used just a pair of shears, and I'm gonna be cutting in an upwards motion. After I went through with my scissors, I went back in with a pair of what do you call this? A razor, a razor comb. I went back over the ends and kind of razored the ends a little bit more, just to kind of get rid of that choppiness, and that kind of made it more layered and more how do you describe it? Just not as blunt looking, if that makes sense. That's pretty much all I did for the cut. It was pretty simple. I was kind of surprised about how easily I was able to kind of get the hair this length, because I really thought that was going to be the hardest part, is the cut. I feel like as long as you cut in an upwards motion using your scissors first, it'll be a lot easier to get that layered look versus just going straight across. So now it's time for our hair dye. I was super excited for this part. So I'm going to start off using the watercolor method and this electric lime dye from Adore. This is going to give us the green for our roots. I did do a tester kind of piece just to make sure that I was using the right color and it was going to come out right and everything. So before I started dyeing the hair, you probably noticed that it's sectioned off into 4 parts. I did this because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't placing the wig too far into the water, so the green was kind of getting everywhere. So having the rubber bands there gave me an idea of how far up I wanted that green to go. I also thought it was going to help make sure that the water kind of soaked in better into the roots and everything, so it didn't come out patchy. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I still had to go back and kind of retouch the green with some more hair dye, so I ended up doing that right after I was done with the watercolor method. Then to touch up, I used a brush applicator to apply my dye. I just ended up using some of the green hair dye that was already in the water. I added a little bit more so it was a lot more pigmented, and I just added that water dye mixture onto the hair and just kind of brushed it on accordingly to where it needed the extra dye. So once the green was done, I'm going to go ahead and start doing the peach type of color. I ended up using a mixture of 2 colors. So I did the Ion Color Brilliant in the shade Salmon, and then I mixed it in with a little bit of the Adore hair dye in the shade Cotton Candy. The salmon shade is really, really vibrant, so I used that cotton candy shade to kind of soften the color a little bit so it's not so intense. And I did use a brush applicator to apply this color. I'm not necessarily blending it into the green. I'm more so kind of stopping it right where the green stops. These are colors that don't necessarily blend well together. They're not complementary colors. So if you kind of take the peach a little too high into the green, it's gonna mesh into the green and create a very odd brown color, if that makes sense. So you don't want to bring the color too far up into the green, but you do want to make sure that it's nice and well blended. And I did only show you guys half of this process because I figured you kind of get the point with me just doing about half of the wig. So this is what it looks like, all colored and everything. I did wash it with some shampoo and conditioner right after, and then from there I'm going to show you guys how I styled it. So I'm gonna get some curls going using a 3/4 inch curling wand. There's no particular way as to how I curled the hair. I just went ahead and created some curls all the way throughout the hair, pretty much in the same direction. So I'm just going through the wig, curling up smaller sections at a time until I'm all done curling everything. Then I went in with a wide tooth comb and combed out all the curls so that way they're not too tight and little Bo Peep looking. So now it's time to install our wig. I'm going to be using my Got To Be Freeze spray to lay the lace down. I like to lay the lace down first before I go into like cutting it and everything. So I'm going to spray that all over the hairline. I already did like my bald cap and everything like that off camera. So as I'm spraying the hairspray, I go in with my hair dryer on a cool setting and just make sure everything is really nice and dry. Then right after, I'm going to cut all that excess lace off using a brow razor. I'm making sure to take my time with this step because you don't want to cut yourself or like cut too much lace. So just take your time, make sure you're not like going too crazy with it or whatever. And as you're cutting the lace, you just want to make sure that it's kind of creating like that jagged line so that way you get more of a natural effect. Now I'm going to start styling up my edges. So I went in with my hot comb for most of this part. I molded my sideburns first, and then I went over the hair that I was going to cut for baby hairs. So that way it's all going in the same direction. I'm going to cut those baby hairs using that same brow razor that we used to cut our lace. Then right after, I'm going to go in with some Lotta Body styling foam and use that to style my baby hairs with my little edge brush. Then from there, I wanted to add that little pony that Khalif did on his wig. So I also used my hot comb for this part as well. It's a lot easier if you have a hot comb because you can just kind of like comb the hair into the direction that you need it to go in, and everything just ends up being like nice and flat that way. So once that section is all flat and in place, I'm going to tie it up using 2 elastic bands. Just create a little ponytail. Then to hide that elastic band, I'm going to take a little piece from the back of the ponytail and just wrap it around and pin it using a bobby pin so that way you can't see it anymore. And that pretty much is it for this look, guys. I just added my little hair scarf for that to kind of keep my edges protected as I did my makeup. If you're interested in the makeup look, I am going to be doing a tutorial for this right after this, so just go ahead and stay tuned. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this hair tutorial. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.